All right, so in the previous lesson, we completed the installation of the Anaconda distribution, and in this lesson, we're going to use it to create our first Conda environment. As a reminder, an environment is an isolated playground or an isolated sandbox. It's essentially a directory on your computer where we can set up a specific version of Python with specific libraries or packages that each have specific versions, etc. The idea behind an environment is that it's a totally isolated place where you can play with a specific chunk of code. So for example, if tomorrow Pandas releases a brand new version and you want to try it out, but you want to make sure that it doesn't break your existing Pandas code, you can create a new environment in which you can download that latest and greatest version, but keep your old environment with the more older version where it's totally functional and working. And each of those environments is distinct and independent and separate, which is really great, especially when you're on several teams or maybe working on multiple Python projects across different versions of the language, etc. So at the conclusion of the previous lesson, we launched the Anaconda prompt. The way we did that is we went to our start menu and we searched for Anaconda prompt, and it launched this application, which is often called the command prompt. This is where we enter text-based commands to our computer. This is how we interacted with the computer before the modern graphical user interfaces that we see today. So this is going to launch you into a specific folder on your computer in the same way that your Explorer window, like this one right here, also launches you into a specific folder on your computer. So just like in here, you can use the command prompt to navigate around folders, to create files, to delete files, etc. So an important note is you may notice that the launch location here may not be exactly where you want it to launch. It may be something that you don't want, like System32. Usually a good place for this to be is your central user directory. That's kind of a good launch point from which you can access things like your desktop folder, your downloads folder, etc. So if this launch location is something that you're not happy with, what you can do is search for Anaconda prompt. You can right-click on the application and select Open File Location. That's going to take you to the installation directory on your computer where Anaconda prompt is actually located right here. At that point, you can right-click the application and select Properties. And here in Properties, under this Shortcut tab, you're going to see a Start In key, and this specifies the directory in which Anaconda prompt is going to launch. If you want to change this, what you can do is actually use your Explorer to navigate to that specific folder. For example, here I want to navigate into my Boris folder, and if I want this to be the location from which Anaconda launches, I can right-click here, select Copy Address as Text, and then, once I've done that, let me just double check, what I can do is paste that exact directory right here with no typos, then press Apply, OK, and the next time you launch your Anaconda prompt, it should be in the exact location that you specified in that field. So here I have my central Boris directory within my users folder. You should pick whatever folder you'd like to launch from yourself. So as I mentioned in the previous lesson, if everything is working correctly, you should see the word base here surrounded by parentheses. And this is actually Anaconda speaking to you. So base here is the name of the root environment or the single environment that Anaconda has automatically set up for us simply by installing the distribution. So this environment is the one that actually comes prepackaged with those 100 or so data analysis libraries. So in theory, we are immediately ready to go and start working with pandas in this environment if we want. However, we're going to hold off on that. In fact, this is something that is different from the original set of videos that I recorded for Windows a couple years ago. A couple years ago, we went straight to work in this root environment or this base environment that's been set up for us. But I realize now that that's not really the best idea because you may be watching other Python courses or other Python tutorials that may be using Anaconda. And if we put everything into this central base environment, it's possible that we will create conflict between our versions and the versions that, let's say, another class expects. Maybe another class that you're watching expects you to have version 3.0 while we might have version 2.0. In that case, all the code may not work. So instead, I say that we use Conda the way it's supposed to be used. We're going to create a totally new environment, a totally new sandbox, and in there we can place all of our installation, and thus it's going to be completely separate from any work you may do with Conda and Anaconda otherwise. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the existing environments that we have installed already. In theory, we should only have one, which is base right here. So what I can do is access a command called conda. This has been set up by Anaconda. This is our central application, and that has a more specific command available on it, on the application, called info. Make sure you place a space, by the way, between conda and info. Afterwards, what we can provide to info is what's called a flag. A flag is just a setting or a configuration option that specifies or customizes the command that you're giving to the command prompt. So here, we're telling Conda that we want information or info on something, but we still haven't told it what we want information on. So the way we can specify it is with some kinds of flags that specify what we're actually specifically asking for information about. So what I can do here is put 2 dashes or 2 hyphens and then write the word ENVS. That is short for environments. So we're asking Conda for information about the existing environments. So when this executes, you'll notice that we're only going to have a single Conda environment listed. Here it is. It's called base. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the installation directory right here. And this star or asterisk indicates that this is the current active or current selected environment. Whatever environment rather that this star is on here is also going to be the environment that you see in your parentheses here. So this is communicating to you that you are currently in the base environment. So if we were to, example, install a Python library right now, it would install it in the base environment because base is the current active environment. If we want to install a Python library in another environment, we make that second environment active and then install, if that makes sense. We have to first activate the playground and then tell Conda what we want to do within that playground. So in order for us to install pandas in our new playground, we first have to create that playground. But before we do that, let's update the actual Conda application itself. This is a good thing to do at the very beginning, just to make sure we're working with the most up-to-date version of the Conda Environment Manager. So the way you can do that is, once again, we're going to use the Conda command. That is the application. We're going to give it the update command. And after a space after update, we're going to specify what we want to update. And in this case, we want to use Conda to actually update Conda. We want to tell the application to update itself. You can press enter here. At that point, Conda will reach out to the internet and check if there's a more up-to-date version. There may be, there may not be. If there is, as you'll see in a second, it's going to tell you the current version number as well as the next version number. So here we're going to see this package, Conda 4.8.3 for me. It's probably going to be a greater version for you. And here you're going to see your current version, then an arrow and the new version. So in other words, it's telling you this is what I currently have and this is what I'm going to move it or upgrade it to. So in my case, from 4.8.2 to 4.8.3. It's going to ask you whether you want to proceed and ask you for either a Y for yes or a N for no. I'm going to say Y for yes. Press enter. It's going to download that package and update that specific package, in this case, Conda. So at this point, we are ready to create our Anaconda environment. The way we're going to do that is we're going to use the command conda space create. Create is the command we give to the Conda application to create a new environment. We're going to give it a flag. That flag is going to be --name. So before Conda can create an environment, it needs to be told the name that you'd like to give it. What name do we want to give it? This name is entirely up to you. You can choose whatever you want as long as it reminds you that it belongs to this course. In my case, I'm going to choose pandas_playground. I think that's a nice fun name that reminds us what the purpose of this environment is. It's a playground for us to play around with pandas in. So at that point, I'm going to press enter. And it's going to ask you whether you want to create the new environment. It's going to give you a confirmation message and also show you where it's going to place this new environment. This all should look good. So I'm going to once again press Y to confirm. And now we're going to have that environment created. But notice that we're still in base. We're still in our first environment that Anaconda automatically set up for us. But luckily, Anaconda tells us how to activate any environment. It says to activate this new environment, use conda activate followed by the name of that environment. In case you ever forget all the environments that you have, remember you have that command conda info space --envs for environment. And this will show you all the environments. Now notice we have Panda's Playground added and also which one is currently active. So we still have base active. So let's go ahead and activate the new environment we just created. So that command is going to be conda activate followed by the name of the environment, the exact same code we see up here. We want to activate the pandas playground environment. Notice here, as soon as that command executes, there's no visual output, but now pandas playground is what's appearing in the parentheses to the left of the prompt. This is a really good sign because it means that we're now in that environment, and any command that we do now that is related to conda will be within the confines or the ecosystem of pandas playground. So what do we want to do? We obviously want to install pandas. Right now, this environment is completely empty. The only thing it really has is a basic installation of Python, but it has no libraries. So how do we install one or more packages? We do a command called conda install. All right, so what do we want to install? Obviously, we want to install pandas. So let's put that down right here. Let's do a space as well. We can actually use this command to install more than one library at a time. In addition to installing pandas, I need to install the environment in which we're actually going to be writing our code in this course, and that's going to be Jupyter Notebook. The way that we can specify that package is simply writing Jupyter, Jupyter. That is going to set up the Jupyter Notebook environment within this environment. The next thing we want to do is install 2 additional libraries that are just going to help us with speed and acceleration. We're not actually going to use these libraries, but Pandas looks for them, and if it's able to find them, it uses them for speed optimizations, so it doesn't hurt. So the first library is called Bottleneck, Bottleneck, Bottleneck. And the next library for optimization is called NumExpr. So NumExpr, NumExpr. Finally, later on in the course, we're going to be doing some plotting. We're going to be drawing some graphs. And in order to do that, we're going to need a library called matplotlib. That is spelled M-A-T-P-L-O-T-L-I-B, matplotlib. All right. And so this is one efficient, convenient way for us to install all of these libraries in one fell swoop. So let's go ahead and press enter here. And you'll notice we asked to install 5 different libraries, but we're going to get this huge list of libraries instead. So what exactly is going on here? Well, many of these libraries have their own dependencies. In other words, they rely on other libraries under the hood to do a lot of their work. So don't you worry, we still have pandas listed here. For example, here we have pandas directly in our list, right? And we have things like Jupyter and matplotlib. If we scroll further up, for example, here is matplotlib. But there are also dependencies that we need to install. Pandas does the smart work of figuring out what those are, and it lists them all here. It's basically saying, hey, if you want to set up everything that you asked for, I'm going to also need to set this up as well. And for us, that's totally fine, but that's why you're seeing all these options, this huge list of libraries. So once again, you can press Y, and that is going to begin the process of downloading these packages, these libraries, and automatically installing them on your computer within your Pandas Playground environment. Again, the beauty or the beautiful part of this is that this is totally independent of any other Anaconda environments you have. So now we have the latest and greatest version of these libraries. Because we did not specify a specific version number, Conda is going to get the latest version. It's going to pull them all in, and it's going to put them within this environment. As I'm recording this in March 2020, the latest version of Pandas is something like 1.0.1, maybe 1.0.2. But whenever you run this command, these numbers are likely to be different for Pandas and also for many of its dependencies. That's just fine. That's just because the library is consistently getting updated as an open source project. So if you see different numbers, that's totally fine. You're just going to get the more up-to-date, latest and greatest version of Pandas. There's a couple other things I want to show you in this lesson in case you ever need them. First up, if you ever want to update a specific package within an environment, it's going to be that familiar conda update command that we used earlier. Earlier on, we used it to update conda itself, but if you ever want to update, for example, pandas, you can do conda update pandas, or whatever library that you want to put right here. We just downloaded the latest and greatest version of Pandas, so this will probably tell us, hey, you already have the latest and greatest version. But in case you don't, it's going to give you a prompt very similar to what you just saw a minute ago with this stuff. It's going to say, here you have this version. I can instead give you this version. Do you want to agree? In that case, you just press Y. It's going to download that specific library. If you want to update all of the libraries within your environment to their latest versions, you can also do this, conda update. And instead of giving it a specific library, you can give it the flag -- all, telling Conda to basically update all the libraries within that environment. Once again, it's going to give us no options here because we just ran install for the first time, which means we already have those latest versions. It's highly unlikely that in the last 5 minutes they just released a new version. But if you do this check, for example, weekly or monthly, eventually you're going to see a couple options appear here. Is it important to update pandas at every chance you get? Not necessarily, but in case you want to be working with the latest and greatest version, you can keep your eye on the official release notes for the library and update it whenever it's updated by the pandas development team. Okay, so a couple more things here. If you ever want to deactivate the current environment, you can write conda deactivate. You can see here what that's going to do is move us from Pandas Playground to our original environment, which is base. So you're going to move off the specific explicit environment that you selected, right? If you ever want to close this, you're just as welcome to close the anaconda prompt, and the next time you open it, it's going to bring you back to base, right? And that's basically going to be your setup process each time you are launching this for the course. You're going to open up the anaconda prompt. You're going to go to the environment that you've set up for this course, which is Pandas Playground. So you're going to launch this. You're going to write conda activate pandas_playground or whatever name you gave it. That's going to take you to Pandas Playground, and in here you're going to run the commands to launch the Jupyter Notebook, which we'll talk about in the very next lesson. All right. One other thing I want to show you is if you ever need to remove an environment for whatever reason, the command for that is conda remove. You don't have to do this, obviously, because you just set it up, but I'm going to do it here so you can see what it looks like. It's going to be conda remove. Just like create, this needs to take a flag called name, in which we specify the name of the environment that we want to remove. So in this case, I'm going to remove Pandas Playground. Afterwards, you can also put another flag that is --all. What that specifies is remove the environment and remove all packages within it. So in this case, Pandas, Jupyter Notebook, everything that we just installed a minute or two ago, that flag says just wipe the entire slate clean. So I'm going to run this command just so you can see what happens. It's going to say, I can't do it actually because you need to deactivate it and then try it again. Makes sense. So what I'm going to do here is run conda deactivate. That's going to bring us back to base. At that point, I can run the remove command. At that point, it's going to say, do you want to proceed? I'm going to remove everything, including these libraries. You can press Y. At that point, it's going to delete everything, and you should be back to your state before you created that environment. All right. And of course, you're welcome to create as many environments as you want. You use the conda create command for that. And then you're also welcome to check on what environments you currently have with the conda info --envs command. All right. That's all there is to cover in this lesson. So I will see you in the next one. In the very next lesson, we're going to talk about how we can launch Jupyter Notebook and the general setup process for the course. We're also going to introduce the course materials. So we're making good progress here with our Windows installation. I will see you in the next lesson.